Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another press briefing. Today, we're going to hit upon some of the stuff, regular updates we do with regard to the pandemic, but today is actually going to be more car day, so we'll get to that just in a moment. But again, we remind people that we are still in the pandemic, so please continue to use all the tools we've given everybody to slow the spread of the virus. That means make sure that you keep that 6 foot of distance between you and other people when you go out in public. If you can't do that, good opportunity to wear a mask. Wear a mask when you go to the store. Wash your hands often. And then please, 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 if you've lost your sense of taste and smell, or if you've got that fever or cough, stay home. We don't want to take the risk you've got coronavirus and then you're spreading it out in there in the community. I also remind people that, especially if you're older, 65 years and older, the monoclonal antibody treatment is a great way to be able to, if you start getting just that first sniffle, this is a great way to make sure that you can avoid the very severe aspects of getting the virus. So please talk to your doctor about that, and doctors, please prescribe that for your patients if they qualify. That's an important treatment. We do all this to make sure that we are continuing to preserve our hospital capacity. We have 38% of our hospital beds available right now, 40% of our ICU beds, and 80% of our ventilators. So we have robust hospital capacity. Over the weekend, I think we were down to about 136 hospitalizations. Right now we're at 142. That's the same level we were at end of July, early August timeframe. So we want to make sure that we keep those hospitalizations low and preserve that hospital capacity. Another way to be able to slow the spread of the virus is by going to testnebraska.com to make sure you don't have the virus. We've delivered now over 702,000 tests through testnebraska.com. So testnebraska.com, please take advantage of it. We're turning those tests around very quickly. And then with regard to vaccines, let's see, now we've delivered over 519,000 vaccines have been administered. So again, looking at the New York Times website, we're 23rd in the percent of population with at least one dose at 18%, 16th with the percent of population of 2 doses at 10%, and 29th in percent of doses used at 78%. So again, please sign up at vaccinate.ne.gov to get in line, and we'll contact you when your turn comes up to be able to get the vaccine, vaccinate.ne.gov, or if you don't have a computer, 833-998-2275, 833-998-2275. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and get into card day here at the state. And, okay, Taylor, we are missing my list of sheets of all of our, oh no, here they are, of all of our guests. So because we got a long list of guests. So first of all, we're going to start with our E30 Demonstration Project. So this was a project that we started actually in 2019. So let me take a step back. In May of 2019, we were very pleased to learn that the EPA had given permission to do sales of E15 all year round. That was fantastic news because that avoided some of the consumer confusion as to why we had to stop selling that during the summer months. Made it difficult for our gas stations across the state and so forth. So a great way to help promote ethanol. In June, we started working on a pilot project in consultation with the EPA, so we got their permission, to be able to use E30, those higher blends of ethanol, in conventional vehicles. So we wanted to put E30, normally you can only use E30 in a flex fuel vehicle, and that is still all they're certified for today, but we wanted to start doing the testing with regard to if you used E30 in a conventional vehicle, what would that mean to mileage and maintenance and so forth, to really get some hard data with regard to what that would do. So we started a program, and I want to thank our Department of Administrative Services because it was their personnel, especially in the Transportation Services Bureau, that worked to install the trackers or the equipment on these cars to be able to track what was going on with regard to the E30 campaign. So we had 40 of our state fleet vehicles equipped with these monitors to be able to put the E30 in, and then also 10 vehicles from the Nebraska State Patrol, and I want to thank Colonel Bolduc for his participation in this as well. So 50 vehicles total that we used E30 in over the course of a year, it's 12 months long, to be able to see what would happen with regard to the maintenance and mileage, and the operators kept logs. And it was our folks at the Department of Administrative Services, Transportation Services Bureau, that then afterwards extracted the data, pulled out the files, the operator logs, and turned that all over. And we worked with University of Nebraska-Lincoln to be able to analyze that. So today we have two guests around that that are going to be here talking about it. First of all, we've got Roger Berry, who's the administrator for the Nebraska Ethanol Board. He's going to talk a little bit more about this. And then we're going to introduce the professor who actually did the research, Dr. Rajiv Saha, who is an assistant professor in the chemical and biomolecular engineering department at the University of Nebraska of Lincoln, to be able to talk about his research and what he found after doing this E30 pilot. Now, one of the reasons we're excited about this pilot is because, well, two reasons. One, if you go back and look at how Nebraska was a leader in introducing the ethanol industry to the world, essentially, back in the 1970s, we did a study, which I think, Roger, you're going to talk a little bit more about this, the 2 million mile study, to be able to talk about how ethanol could be used in a conventional gas-burning vehicle. So what we're doing here is really just a continuation of that tradition here in Nebraska of being a leader and looking at E30 and how it is going to impact vehicles. So this is really kind of a step to getting certification for higher blends of ethanol in your regular vehicle. The second reason this is important is because when you use E30 in your vehicles, this tremendously helps out the environment. So for example, by using E30, you can reduce carbon black emissions from your tailpipe by 45% and reduce the NOx and the hydrocarbon emissions by over 20%. So higher blends of ethanol help clean up the environment. So again, this is something where people, by using ethanol, can save money at the pump, help clean up the environment, and of course it's great for our farmers and ranchers, as 35% of our corn crop goes into ethanol. So without any further ado, I'm going to call up Roger Berry, and he's going to introduce Dr. Saha to be able to talk about the research. Roger?
Good morning, everybody. Governor Ricketts, thank you very much for this opportunity today to publicly release the summary results of this important project, but also, more importantly, thank you very much for your unwavering support of the ethanol industry. We certainly do appreciate it. I'm going to quickly tell you why we have performed this demonstration. Then I'll introduce you to one of the team members from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Department of Engineering to go over the results that you will find in the summary document. Before I tell you why the Nebraska Ethanol Board organized this demonstration project, I want to first thank our partners for their participation. I especially want to thank the Nebraska Department of Administrative Services and the Nebraska Administrative Services Department of Transportation Bureau and the Nebraska State Patrol for working with us to log the data for the automobiles and all the work that those two departments put into this project. It was extremely important, and they were great to work with throughout this whole process. And also the University of Nebraska and Dr. Saha, your team, analyzing the results and all the work that went into that. As the governor mentioned, in the mid-1970s, the Nebraska Ethanol Board organized a similar demonstration project called the 2 million mile gasohol road test. That was still at the time that we used the term gasohol. We no longer use that term, but that's what it was called at that time. The road test was largely responsible for showing the nation that everyday vehicles on the road at that time could run perfectly on E10 gasoline. Because of that demonstration, we now have 97% of the gasoline that's used in the United States containing at least 10% ethanol. Today, our nation faces a very crucial task of lowering greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. It is critical that we immediately start reducing the greenhouse gas emissions from our transportation sector. Since ethanol, as the governor mentioned earlier, has great properties of eliminating those greenhouse gases and a lot of the other pollutants that go along with straight gasoline, it is essential that we begin to use higher blends, because the more ethanol we use in our fuel, the greater it decreases those emissions that come out of our cars. So E30 blends will result in vehicles that are just as clean as electric vehicles. And the wonderful part about that is it is a fuel that we have available today, right now, with the infrastructure in many places already in place in order to instantly start bringing down those emissions that we need to bring down. For the automobile manufacturers to start producing the cars made specifically for E30 fuel, they have to know that the legacy fleet on the road today can use that same fuel. That is exactly why we have demonstrated with this project that today's cars will not be found along the side of the road as junk because they put E30 into their car. We have not had a single incident of a car being left along the side of the road because they used E30. It works perfectly. And with that, I'm going to stop my comments and invite Dr. Saha up, and he can tell you those results and why we haven't found any cars along the side of the road. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot, Governor Ricketts, for giving me the opportunity to share the results. As a researcher from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, I always find it fascinating when I can come and talk to the public about the research that we did. So this is a fascinating project. Why? Because we did a study which involved 50 different vehicles, and we did the study for over a period of 1 year. So we have the seasonal variation taken into account, and I will read some of the bullets or nuts and bolts that we could find from the report. So this is, again, a year-long demonstration in which we have 50 non-flex vehicles from the state of Nebraska. Basically, these 50 vehicles came from the Transportation Bureau and the Nebraska State Patrol, and we performed the engine performance, economic feasibility, and environmental impact for E30. So 26 of these vehicles are fueled by E15 or E10, so that is our control group. And then we have another 24 vehicles which ran on E30. So the effect of using E30 on performance and fuel efficiency basically shows that there is no major difference between E30 run vehicle and E15 or E10 run vehicle. So the air-to-fuel ratio, that is one of the parameters that we have used. It doesn't show any difference. E30 has no observable negative impact on the overall vehicle performance. The cost per mile for E15 and E30 fuel vehicles are nearly identical over the period of this 1 year demonstration. A price difference of more than 2.5% compared to E15 would cause E30 to become a more economically viable fuel. Now, when we think about the impact of using E30 on state-owned vehicle, we found that if in a hypothetical scenario, the Nebraska Transportation Services Bureau and the State Patrol, if they change from E15 to E30, then the ethanol consumption would increase by 66,000 gallons per year. And the CO2 emissions for that change would decrease by 529 tons per year. So overall, the impact of allowing the statewide E30 consumption, we could say that if only we could transform 10% of the 1.9 million registered non-flex vehicle in Nebraska, if we convert them to from E10 to E30, then the ethanol consumption would increase by 18.5 million gallons per year, and the CO2 emission for that period of time would decrease by 64,000 tons per year. So overall, these are our major findings. We will release the report to the public, and there will also be a manuscript that we will publish. But overall, we are really, really excited about this project, and we can say that some of the other parameters that we studied, and I haven't mentioned, those are also included in the report, and that will also come out to a manuscript. We haven't found any negative impact on any of our vehicles. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Saha. Again, appreciate you and your team doing the research. And again, I want to thank the Department of Administrative Services, Transportation Services Bureau, as well as the State Patrol for working on that, and of course, Roger Berry at the Ethanol Board as well for pulling all that together. And again, you can see it's a way for people to save money at the pump, clean up the environment. Was it 64,000 tons of carbon removed from the environment if everybody would use E30 just in Nebraska? And then, of course, great for our farmers and ranchers as well. So thank you very much. So now, as I mentioned, today is Car Day, and so we're going to continue on our theme here by talking about the Department of Motor Vehicles. Rhonda Lamb and her team are working to fulfill that mission for us here at the state of Nebraska, which is to create opportunity through more effective, more efficient, and more customer-focused state government. And every day is a great day at the DMV, right, Rhonda? Every day is a great day at the DMV. And so she's got 3 new services she's going to be talking about today and some speakers to go along with it. So not only do we have Rhonda Lamb, who's our director for the Department of Motor Vehicles, but we have Kevin Park, who's a government affairs analyst with the Insurance Auto Auctions, and then also Cindy Schroeder, who is the fleet data manager at the Aurora Co-op. And the three new services that Rhonda's going to be talking about, one is fleet management services. So she's going to be able to talk about that, as well as our e-dealer services, which both of these are ways that we are leveraging better process and better technology to provide a more automated service that then saves our customers times. And then the submission of the SR22 forms, which also involves leveraging better process and better technology to make it a more efficient process, and again, reduce the amount of time it takes for us to be able to serve our customers. So Rhonda, rather than me getting into those details, I'm gonna let you get into those details because you know this much better than I do, and then you can bring up our guests.
Thank you, Governor Ricketts, and good morning. In our ongoing efforts to be more business-friendly, the Department of Motor Vehicles has launched 3 new online services which allow our industry partners to save time and money. The first of these services is e-fleet services. Vehicles are required to be registered in the counties where they're located. Businesses who own 25 or more vehicles are eligible to utilize this service. Many businesses in Nebraska have hundreds of vehicles, and in some cases, thousands. In the case of a business who owns hundreds of vehicles which are registered in multiple counties, that particular business would previously have to contact each county, either in person or through the mail, or in order to register their vehicles or complete the online transaction for each vehicle. E-Fleet Services allows the business to renew all vehicles whose registrations expire in the same month in one transaction. The service allows businesses to upload their vehicle information into a convenient spreadsheet, reducing errors and saving time for data entry. More than 50 Nebraska businesses possessing more than 20,000 vehicles are already utilizing this service. The second online service is Dealer e-Services. This service provides a way for dealers and insurance companies to issue a vehicle title electronically to the customer. Using the inventory and sales management system the dealers already have, they can complete the paperwork necessary to apply for the vehicle title immediately, rather than mailing it or delivering it in person to the county treasurer or having the buyer do it themselves. This significantly reduces the time it takes to get a title issued, and is a more efficient process for businesses who want to quickly sell a vehicle. To date, 19 dealers are using the new portal, and more than 11,000 titles have been issued electronically. The third of our new services is the real-time electronic submission of the SR22 document. This information is required to be filed by insurance companies in order for a person to get their license reinstated. Previously, the participating companies sent the documents through the U.S. mail, oftentimes with overnight postage rates. With the new service, the document is transmitted and the information is posted to their driving record real time. If the driver has met all other requirements for reinstatement, their license can be immediately reinstated. This saves time and money for insurance providers and gets Nebraskans back on the road and working quicker. 4 insurance companies are currently using the service, and others are in the process of coming online. This service completes the last step of an entirely real-time electronic process for Nebraskans whose license has been suspended to get reinstated, a first in the DMV world. Following are just a couple of the comments we received from the providers currently using the program. Out of all the states that we file electronically, I would say Nebraska is by far the best site regarding ease of filing, the information required and requested, and the site setup. We definitely would recommend the process to other companies. The second, it was supremely beneficial. We had some of our client members who had letters from the DMV and needed us to immediately rectify the issues. I was able to do that for them. The process is easy and user-friendly. I would like to thank our industry partners for being here today and for those who helped develop and pilot these new services. I would also like to thank my staff who works hard to continue to develop innovative services for the people of Nebraska, and for the partnership with our vendors and the state's e-government provider, NIC Nebraska, who helped us successfully deploy these services. At this time, I'd like to invite a couple of the representatives who've been using these services to share how it's positively impacted their businesses, and that's Kevin Park and Cindy Schroeder.
Good morning. Governor Ricketts, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here to share with you the value and the benefit that this e-titling services has provided to companies such as Insurance Auto Auctions. The company I work for assists Nevada insurance companies and others with obtaining titles prior to those vehicles being auctioned. Consistent with Governor Ricketts' initiative for excellence, this new program has allowed us to reduce our title turn time from 3 to 4 weeks to just a few days. Our ability to do the back-end work for the data entry has allowed also the state and local government employees to be able to concentrate more on the needs of the citizens of the state of Nebraska rather than just doing data entry work. Having this new service also was a great value during the pandemic. When there were many places that were being closed down, we were able to continue to do the data entry, to send those files electronically in, and to have the titles printed without really much in the way of any delays. Have to move that up. The ability for us to process these titles also benefits the businesses and the citizens of the state of Nebraska by getting these vehicles and parts to vehicles out there into the economy much faster, quicker, and making it a much smoother transition. With the cooperation of the Department of Motor Vehicles, with Director Lamb and her staff, allowing me to work with them to transition and to create this program in deploying this e-titling services has been a huge value, and I thank them. And Governor Ricketts, I thank you for your foresight and for your guidance and direction in moving this kind of a program into the forefront. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Ricketts and Rhonda, for inviting me to share. My name is Cindy Schroeder. I'm the Fleet Data Manager at Aurora Cooperative Elevator Company. Aurora Cooperative has been using the Nebraska DMV e-fleet services renewal services for 2 years. Aurora Cooperative is a large agricultural company that services over 70 communities across Nebraska. Because of our large footprint and type of vehicles and products we offer, we have a substantial number of vehicles and trailers that are out for the needs of our farmers owners. We work with, at the state level, DMV, and many of the county treasurers. With fleet renewal services, what was once a long process, visiting or mailing all those county treasurer renewals and paying each of the fees one by one is now a simplified and streamlined process. I would have a stack of papers that was a good foot thick that now is totally online and no paper. Now the entire process can be online, so everything can be completed and processed more quickly with a press of a button. We can also do things throughout the year, like look up how many vehicles we have registered in each county, where they are, and access all kinds of information quickly on the portal. By using the fleet renewal service, we can spend more time focusing on our business instead of managing the paperwork from the DMV. We appreciate the DMV's efforts to help streamline the management of our vehicles and trailers. This kind of service is appreciated by us and should be appreciated by all businesses throughout Nebraska. Thank you. Governor Ricketts.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Cindy was telling me that it used to take her like all month to get this done, and now it's down to like the first 10 days of the month she can get it done, so saving a tremendous amount of time. And so we appreciate all the efforts. Rhonda, you and your team, Kevin and Cindy, thanks for being here today. And then, of course, Roger and Rajiv, thank you for joining us as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into questions and answers. So I only, let's see, I got a couple questions here from Julie Anderson, the Omaha World Herald. Can Governor Ricketts provide updates on how many shots were given last week and the supply of vaccine for this? So last week, we were able to do over 90,000 vaccinations, and that was from the period of February 28th to March 6th. So again, we continue to see the amount of vaccine, especially last week with the Johnson & Johnson all coming into the state. Now, I do expect that, as the federal government has told us, the couple middle weeks here of March, we're not going to be receiving those Johnson & Johnson vaccines, so we will not get that big dose like we did last week where we had 15,000 vaccines coming to the state. But anyway, that's good news. Her second question kind of leads into that, any new forecast for the upcoming weeks? And again, just standard with what we've had in the past, we do see those increasing amounts of vaccines coming into the state, but it really is depending on what the federal government actually delivers, and no Johnson & Johnson for the next couple weeks. And then she's also asking, and now that we're roughly 3 months into this, is the state tracking in any way who is and who is not getting vaccinated, as in places in the state, groups, or, is there, who's to be hesitant and a wait-and-see attitude and so forth? We're actually not tracking that. Again, just want to remind everybody, getting a vaccine is a voluntary program, so we're not requiring anybody to get a vaccine, and so we're not tracking who turns it down when they're being offered, and we're not planning on tracking who's turning it down. So, obviously, if somebody else wants to kind of do a survey out there, they're free to pursue that with the folks who are getting the vaccine or choosing not to get the vaccine, but we at the state are not going to be tracking that. Before I get into the other questions, just so I don't forget right now, because I'm looking at my sheet here, we have another news conference scheduled at 10 a.m. on Wednesday Central Time right here in this room, so we'll be doing an update on that at that time. Taylor, do you have any questions that came in electronically?
We have a couple questions from Ruda at KMTV. She asks, the CDC just passed guidelines for those that are fully vaccinated, which includes the ability to meet indoors freely, and others that are vaccinated without masks. Will any of these new guidelines change or lighten school or quarantine procedures in Nebraska?
So Ruda Olsonai from KMTV is asking, the CDC just changed their guidelines with regard to if you've received a vaccine, you can meet indoors without wearing a mask, and will those sorts of changes from the CDC impact the guidelines we're putting out from the state? And I would say the answer is yes. I don't have any specifics I can give you right now on that, but we certainly watch all the things the CDC is doing and update our guidance as well. And Dr. Antone, I don't know if you had anything else you would like to add to that?
Well, just that if you're fully vaccinated 14 days after your second vaccination, you don't need to quarantine for the next 90 days if you're exposed.
So Dr. Antone would just remind people that, again, once you get the vaccine, you need to wait 14 days to get that full immunity. So that would be the second dose if you're using either the Moderna or the Pfizer, so 14 days after that second dose. And then if you do get exposed, you do not have to quarantine. So that's some of our so that's, for example, one of the examples of how we have changed our guidelines from pre-vaccine times. So now with the vaccine, if you do get exposed, you do not have to quarantine 14 days after you receive your second dose. Thank you, Dr. Antone.
And Ruda asks, what are your thoughts on the President's executive order to expand voter access?
So she's asking about, Ruth's asking about my opinion on the President's executive order to expand voter access, and this president has issued more executive orders than any of his predecessors, and by multiple times. So I got to tell you, Ruda, I have not reviewed that one, so I can't give you an opinion on it at this time, but we can certainly follow up with you later.
That's all I've got.
All right, great, thanks. Andrew, do you have any questions today? Oh, I'm sorry, we got Paul here too. I'm sorry, Paul, I didn't see you sitting on the sideline there. All right, Andrew, you got anything?
I had a question about the ethanol, the E30. I guess, what's the price of E30? How come gas prices are going up? And how does this announcement help out, I guess? It could help out.
So the question is, with gas prices going up, how does this help? And again, I think it gets back to what Dr. Saha said, is that if you had a price differential of 2.5%, I believe is what you said, right? On E30, that makes it more cost-effective than using E15 in your gas tank. And in general, that's one of the ways to help make sure your dollar that you're spending on fuel goes farther. So I think that's an important note that, again, E30 is not certified for non-flex fuel vehicles, so we're talking about some future state, but that there's the opportunity there for this to make it even less expensive for folks at the pump. And then, Roger, I don't know, did you have anything else you want to come up and add? Okay, so Roger Berry's going to come up here just a second.
Andrew, the only thing I might add to that is, as the study has shown, our legacy fleet can run on E30. We've been working with the auto manufacturers for many years now, and they actually have the technology available to produce a high compression engine that takes advantage of the octane in E30, which then you increase your efficiency, 5 to 10% of that engine. So that too would help to bring about savings. E30 is generally about 5 cents per gallon less than what E15 is. E15 is generally 3 to 5 cents per gallon less than what E10 is. So you can start building in the savings there also. But the main thing I want everybody to know is if we could get the auto manufacturers comfortable with the fact that the legacy fleet could run on E30, they would hopefully start building these engines that are designed to run specifically on E30 and would save consumers even more money.
And what's the difference between that and what they're doing with flex fuel vehicles right now?
The question is, what's the difference between a engine that's designed specifically for E30 and what they're doing with flex fuels vehicles right now? Did I understand the question correctly? Flex fuel vehicles are designed to run on a range of fuels from anywhere from E10 to E85. So it's not an engine that's optimized for any one blend of ethanol. With this newer engine that they're talking about, it's an engine that is optimized to run on E30. So that's where you get your greater efficiencies.
Thank you, Roger. Paul?
So what's the process? You use this report to do what? You go to the EPA or somebody to get permission to use E30?
So again, what's the process? So again, I want to draw the analogy to what Nebraska did as a leader doing the 2 million mile program back in the 1970s to really get people comfortable with the idea that you can use ethanol in your vehicles. It's a similar thing for this. We worked with the EPA to start creating this base of data that E30 can work in conventional fleets. And then as Roger said, continue to work with car manufacturers on that. And Roger, do you have anything you want to add with regard to the process, working with the EPA or car manufacturers or anything else? Yeah.
Paul, the process was pretty involved working with the EPA. We had to provide to them the list of all the vehicles we were using with their VIN numbers, the whole thing that went in there. And also we had to provide any station in the state of Nebraska that was going to be dispensing that E30 into these vehicles that were non-flex fuel vehicles. So they had to approve those vehicles, and then they also had to approve all the E30 stations that we have in the state of Nebraska so that we could do this project under the auspice and legally through the EPA. Does that?
We also want to talk about what would be the next steps with this data?
What next steps with the data? Okay, yes.
They have to take some action to allow this E30 to be used?
Yes, there would have to be what's called a reed vapor pressure. I've lost my word here. A reed vapor pressure, basically allowance, I guess we could say, that's not the word I'm looking for, but an allowance for these vehicles to be able to run on E30. Now, if it's a vehicle that was specifically designed for that E30, then it would have already gone through the EPA process and been certified to run on those fuels. Am I still not answering your question correctly?
Well, I got a car. Can I go get E30 and put it in my car now, or do I have to wait for some EPA?
Let's say legally and not legally. Yes, you can go put E30 in your car right now. It's not legal according to the EPA. I will tell you, I have done it for 5 years, though. I have a 1999 Oldsmobile, and it's run on E30 for 5 years. That's a 1999, So yes, you can, but we want to make sure that we keep things as legal as possible. No, there's no rule pending right now. There is no rule pending right now on that. So it would have to go through the entire process, which.
Roger, do you want to draw the analogy between getting E15 all year long versus the E50, just how we got the EPA to switch off of that? You want to just draw an analogy of that?
Yeah, sure. Basically, when we look at how long did it take to get E15 year-round, we've been pushing for that for a long time to be able to sell E15 year-round, but probably took 2 years of a process in there, and then the announcement from the president when that came in. So I would say we'd probably be looking, if it's based upon how we did with the E15 year-round, we'd probably be looking at a 2-year process or so.
And what's the problem with burning it in the summer? Is it vapor lock or something?
That's one, just no, vapor lock is not a problem anymore. We don't have any carbureted vehicles on the roads anymore, and that's where vapor lock used to occur. We now have all direct injection engines, and vapor lock is not a problem. But say your question again, please.
Why weren't they allowing its use in the summer?
Okay, there again, we come into what's called read vapor pressure. EPA says we have to have a minimum of 9.0 pounds of read vapor pressure. What that means is the rate that that gasoline will evaporate. Of course, as it evaporates, it's putting vapors into the air. So we have to have that minimum of 9.0. And when you mix ethanol with gasoline, it raises that read vapor pressure and makes it to where it evaporates more easily. So that's what we have to pay attention to. Actually, no. It's not linear by any means. Ethanol by itself does not evaporate very easily. Gasoline by itself does not evaporate very easily. But when you put the two components together, then it does start. But the curve, when you reach E10, you actually start going down on that read vapor pressure. It gets lower and comes back to meeting those specifications of EPA. But at this time, EPA is not recognizing that.
What could this mean for the industry, the ethanol industry, if you get E30 into these cars?
I think maybe the best way to... Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Andrew is asking, what would this mean if we were able to burn E30 in all of our cars? It would be huge to the state of Nebraska and to the entire Corn Belt and the entire nation. Keep in mind that when ethanol is doing good, it's a $5 billion industry just to the state of Nebraska. Imagine if we could double or triple what we produce here in the state of Nebraska. We have the capability here in Nebraska producing 2.6 billion gallons. The past few years, we've only been producing 2.1 or 2.2. And of course, in 2020, with the coronavirus, we produced even less than that. It was going to come out about 1.8 to 1.9 billion gallons of ethanol. So if we could increase that to E30, you're talking a very large increase. And we could get into a situation here in the state of Nebraska where we could start seeing our ethanol industry growing again. And that would be fantastic for the economy of the state of Nebraska. As we all know, when agriculture's doing well, the whole state's doing well. And that would really help agriculture if we could get into that situation.
And Roger, we recently had one case of an ethanol plant, and maybe people are a little bit worried about ethanol, maybe having problems with other types of contamination. Can you address that at all?
I'd be happy to address that. We had one ethanol here in the state of Nebraska, the Meade Alt-In ethanol plant, that was using seed corn, a coated seed corn, in order to produce ethanol. I want to assure everybody that the ethanol is just like any ethanol at any other ethanol plant. And what happens is when that goes through the process, that coating, which is insecticides, comes through on the distiller's grains, and that's where the problem was. And with that ethanol plant, it was a waste disposal problem, not an ethanol problem that's going on there. So that was the only plant that we have here in the state of Nebraska that uses that process. All of our other ethanol plants use field corn, which is not a treated corn. It's the same corn that's sold to livestock producers to flake or to grind in order to feed their livestock. And so that is a very isolated situation that doesn't happen at any of our other plants here in the state of Nebraska. Okay.
Isn't the concern about ethanol the emissions when it's produced? It's not the emissions that come out of the car. And wouldn't, if you were selling more ethanol, wouldn't those emissions go up? Did you look at how that might balance out?
Right, right. The question is on the emissions on ethanol, and if we're producing more ethanol, don't we have more emissions from that ethanol? It would be like any industry, Paul. As you produce more, yes, you will have more emissions that are going out there. But the main emission that we have with ethanol, as far as the actual production of ethanol, is carbon dioxide. There are very easy ways to collect that carbon dioxide, and you know at the federal government right now, there's a lot of talk going on what's called carbon capture and sequestration. And there's going to be a lot of programs to where we will be able to actually capture that carbon coming out of those ethanol plants. which will then help us increase what's called the carbon score of that ethanol, so that when we sell into a market, say like California, it increases the price of that ethanol because it's a lower carbon ethanol. So we're excited about the opportunities that are coming to make ethanol even greener than what it already is today. And we think that we can produce more ethanol, have our cars burning more ethanol, reducing greenhouse gases that way, yet at the same time, reducing those greenhouse gases that our plants are emitting also. So there's exciting times ahead. To my knowledge, we have one plant here in the state of Nebraska that does capture, and that at this time that ethanol or that carbon dioxide is used for the production of dry ice.
Where's that?
That's E-Energy Adams.
And, this may be an uninformed question. Doesn't the miles per gallon get affected when you use E30 rather than E10?
In a conventional engine, slightly. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Governor. The question was, doesn't the miles per gallon get affected when you're using E30? In a conventional engine, because that engine is not maximized for that E30, is not taking advantage of that octane, you can see some decrease. What we have noticed, and is what this study has brought out, is that there is no measurable difference between an E15, an E10, an E15, and E30 in our conventional vehicles. Andrew?
I have a vaccine question. Can I ask you about vaccine questions?
Oh, no, I will relinquish the podium.
Really, Roger? You didn't want to answer the vaccine question? Okay. Yeah, fine. Yes, Andrew.
Governor, I guess with these pharmacies, have you heard very much of people, I guess, leaving their community to kind of hunt for vaccines in smaller communities to get vaccines? And is that how you envisioned all this rollout would be?
So again, what Andrew's asking about is, have we seen people go shopping, say, leaving a bigger community, go looking at a smaller community for vaccines? And the way the system is set up is you have to register with that, the state, to be able to get on the list, to be able to receive the vaccine, and then we contact you to let you know that your turn is available. So there's not going to be this mass going around the state looking for vaccines. Now, with the pharmacy program in particular, what we've asked is, because the federal government launched this before, we had the systems in place to be able to talk to the pharmacies and to the state, we've asked local public health directors to submit lists to those pharmacies of people who would be eligible. But again, those would be people on a list that either the state or the local health department collected, and those would be people from the local area that they're giving to those pharmacies. Now, does that mean that there may be some people who pick up an extra dose here or there? There certainly could be that possibility, but by and large, it'll be all people local to those pharmacies who are going to be eligible to get those vaccines.
And how close are you to, I guess, combining those systems together so that you have one system?
And so the question is, how close are we to be able to combine those systems to have one system? That's our VRAS system we talked about last week, Andrew. So that's that system that we're working to get stood up here at the state of Nebraska, and we're piloting right now with some of those local health departments. So we expect that hopefully by the time we get through March, we'll be bringing on all those local health departments, and as we do that, we can also bring on pharmacies as well. Paul?
Do we know how many people have signed up for shots?
Do we know how many people have signed up through Vaccinate Nebraska right now? Dr. Antone, do you know right off the top of your head? I don't.
It was 200,000, and then after the VRAS system went up, I heard there was an additional 60-some thousand, so those are the numbers I have.
We know the number is over 200,000, Paul, but we can follow up with you and get the exact number.
But aren't we looking at an adult population of about 1.3 or 1.4 million?
So the adult population of Nebraska, everybody the age of 16 and over, is that 1.48 million that we have on our dashboard.
Are you concerned if it's like 1 in 6 people are signing up for shots?
So the question is, so far, if Paul's just doing the quick math, if only 1 in 6 people are signing up for vaccines, that's why every time I get up here, Paul, I'm encouraging people to go to vaccinate.ne.gov to get people signed up and encourage them to sign up. But again, we're still focusing right now on the 65 years and older, so that could be one of the issues with regard to people signing up. But we do encourage people to get signed up, because then that's how we're going to contact people and let them know their turn's available.
Do you think it's going to take like mobile units going out to just get
So the question is, do we think we're going to have mobile units? That certainly may be one of the things that we do. We are talking about additional ways that we're going to be able to expand the ability to get vaccines. You know, we're talking about the teams and with our public health directors. Right now, with the amount of vaccine we're coming into the state, I think you can see, you know, here in Lincoln with what they're doing at the Pinnacle Bank Arena or what Douglas County has done with like the Creighton facility. We are setting up those clinics where people can get in line and we can knock out a lot of people, you know, in a very short period of time. So do I think there'll be walk-up clinics eventually? Again, I think one of the goals for the pharmacy program is that people would probably go to their pharmacy and get it eventually. I mean, just kind of be able to go in and get it. So they're probably not going to be necessarily walk-up clinics per se, but probably just people go to their local pharmacy.
And does this new CDC guideline, do you think it'll change, you know, like your behavior around Easter time? Or do you think, you know, how will your family get together?
So the question is, will the new CDC guidelines that, hey, if you've had the vaccine and it's 2 weeks later, will it change, you know, Easter get-togethers, and how is my family talking about it? Actually, interesting, Andrew, we were just talking about that with my wife yesterday about, you know, are we going to have the big family get-together that we normally do at Easter? And so I actually haven't reached out to my family to discuss that yet, so I don't know what we're going to do at Easter at this point. But it does, you know, with the new CDC guidelines, does create more opportunities for people to be able to get together. And I think the same is true, though, is we want to continue to make sure we're exercising caution, right? So if not all family members have been vaccinated, and there's certainly that category of, you know, age 55 or 65 and older, you're going to need to be more cautious with regard to the size of those gatherings and that sort of thing.
Time for one or two more questions.
Time for a couple more questions.
Can I ask Dr. Antone a question about younger people, I guess, and vaccines for children?
So Andrew would like to ask you, Dr. Antone, about vaccines for children.
What have you heard about, you know, when that might start happening? Is that, you know, is that something you guys are talking about as well, vaccinating children?
So Andrew asked about, are there studies or are there anything going on right now nationwide or internationally about vaccinating children? I know there is a study right here in Nebraska going on right now between the University of Nebraska and Children's Hospital about adolescents. I'm not certain the age category for that, but I know there are studies going on right now.
What do you see as the advantages of vaccinating children?
So Andrew asked, what would be the advantages for vaccinating children? And I think it would be just like any advantage for the seasonal flu. So we could cut down on the rate of transmission and hopefully have herd immunity. So I think, you know, that is in the works, obviously. It's just that the initial studies, the phase 3 studies for the 3 vaccines now did not include any age group less than age 16.
And apparently nationwide, there seems to be an increase in the amount of younger people that are having some complications with COVID. Have you heard that in Nebraska?
Andrew asked, are there, he said there's some reports that the complications in children as far as COVID goes, you know, there was that multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children. That was a worry and a concern for children, and that's still ongoing, but it's not as large as what that I think we thought we might see. So there always are worries about that, but nothing that I've seen lately that makes people more concerned about that.
All right, one last question. I was actually going to call it there because Andrew asked like 3 there, kind of went beyond 2, but okay, fine. We'll do. Anybody ask one more? Paul, you good? All right, great. Thank you all very much for joining us here today. And again, please remember to continue to practice, even with the vaccines, continue to practice those good habits of staying 6 feet away from people in public, wear a mask when you go to the store, wash your hands often, stay home when you have those symptoms. Sign up at vaccinate.ne.gov or call 1-833-998-2275. And of course, also, if you do contract coronavirus and you're older, like 65 years and older, contact your doctor about the monoclonal antibody treatment. That'll be important to be able to help avoid any of the severe reactions to the disease. With that, thank you all again, and we'll see you back here 10 a.m. Central Time on Wednesday. And thanks to all of our guests.